DayZ is all about survival, but let's be honest, some players do things that scream, I suck. And here I'm going to give you a list with so many terrible things on it you'd think I was reading a transcript from the Diddy case. If you liked the video, please leave a like or a subscribe, it really does help me out. But without further ado, let's get into the video.
You can have it, I was just checking that you... Okay.
Keep in mind, this is just my opinion. Feel free to let me know what I've missed in the comments. I genuinely want to hear what you think makes a bad player. Additionally, if I call something you do out, don't take it personally. Just explain why I'm wrong in the comments and we'll hug it out in the showers. Starting off with a sure way to tell somebody is just not very good at DayZ and its controls. Some players decide to bind their lean and movement keys to the same buttons. The idea is simple. Make themselves harder to hit in firefights by constantly leaning while strafing. The reality, it's a terrible idea. The setup makes your movements awkward and predictable, especially in close quarters combat. It's exploitative, you look stupid doing it, it doesn't really give you much of an advantage, and it's just odd. Leaning should be a deliberate choice, not some automatic twitch triggered by a keybind. Next up is loading up on gear in Livonia and then joining Sakal. This lazy tactic is a favorite among players who want all the loot without any of the work. They load up in Livonia where gearing up is easier and then hop over to Sakal to avoid the brutal challenge of surviving its harsh snowy environment. The problem? Every time they die, they have to repeat the process. Switch servers, gear up in Livonia, switch servers again, and head back to Sakal to die and switch servers. Not only does this waste your time and not really provide you with adequate clothing for Sakal given Livonia is way warmer, but it also stops players from learning how to actually survive in Sakal's unique conditions, which with a little bit of time isn't actually that difficult. Next up is killing fresh spawns. If you're taking out fresh spawns when you've got some gear, you're not a good player, you're just a bully. There's no sport in killing somebody who hasn't had a chance to defend themselves, and the loot they drop is almost never worth it because it's so low tier. It just ruins somebody's starting game, which isn't really glamorous to begin with. I personally think this might be the lowest thing you can possibly do in DayZ. It's like punching a baby. You're going to win that fight, not because you're skilled, but because you're not. Then we have camping. Sitting in one spot for hours waiting for someone to walk into your crosshairs is just not a good way to play. It's camping and it's one of the worst things you can do in DayZ because there's just no point. Not only does it take zero skill, but it also involves removing any sense of adventure or risk from the game. Now, there are exceptions to this and not everyone is a camper just because they're staying still for a while. Sometimes it's a perfectly reasonable tactic, but just camping towns on a hill trying to snipe anyone who walks by with no end goal is camping and it contributes nothing to your growth as a player. If you want kills, get out there and earn them. But contrary to the last one, you can also overdo it. Some players just can't resist chasing down every target, even when it's a bad idea, or worse, not ducking out when you've lost the advantage. Taking someone on when you think you have an advantage is a good trick, and something most of us do, but not backing off when you're clearly outmatched or there's too much risk sometimes is not a good idea. Overcommitting to combat is a recipe for disaster. You'll burn through your ammo, expose yourself to ambushes, and often end up in a worse position than when you started. And even if you do win, there's every possibility it's Pyrrhic and you'll lose more than the kill was worth. A good player knows when to disengage and live to fight another day. Just a quick heads up, if you've made it this far, you might actually like the content, and if so, maybe consider leaving a subscribe. Love you. But if you are in a situation where you feel you need to duck out and actually run away, don't leave the server. Combat logging is the ultimate cowardice move. When a player logs out mid-fight to avoid dying, it ruins the experience for everybody involved. You're basically saying, I can't handle the consequences of my actions, which defeats the whole purpose of DayZ. It's fine to lose. You should lose. You should lose a lot. It's exciting, unless it's to a mobster and he breaks your wife's legs. But if you're going to engage in combat or play a game where it's enabled, accept that losing is a part of the game. Gear comes and goes, but a reputation for combat logging sticks forever, or until you get banned because most servers don't allow it. Next up is one I just have to mention really quickly. It's exploiting. From glitching into walls to exploiting gearing methods. Exploiting in general is something only the worst players do. Yes, it might give you an edge in the show short term, but it ruins the game for everybody else and makes you look like a cheater. The thing about winning is it's only really worth it when you earn it. Play fair, it's more rewarding in the long run, and there's literally no other reason to do it other than you just suck. Then we have, and this is something you've probably heard a lot and I think you're going to understand it, but bear with me. This is a harder one to explain because there's a lot to it. It's misunderstanding DayZ's guns. Every DayZ player has seen it, but it's important to know what gun to use and when, but also how to use the guns you have in a conventional way for when you don't have a choice, which is really the case most of the time. Next is killing everybody on sight. If your go-to move in DayZ is to shoot every single person you see, you're not getting the most out of DayZ. Sure, some encounters are bound to end in violence, but treating every interaction like it's a deathmatch robs the game of what makes it unique. It's social dynamics. DayZ is about survival, yes, but it's also about human connections, about alliances and the unpredictable moments that come from talking rather than shooting. Gunning down everyone on sight not only makes you predictable, but also limits your opportunities to learn, trade, and even find teammates. But survival isn't just about killing, it's about thinking. Maybe try a hello before pulling the trigger next time. But the absolute worst thing you can do that makes you a terrible player is to think you know everything, but you can avoid that by clicking here and learning 17 advanced PvP tips you probably don't know, or for something else, click here. And as always, until next time.